Afternoon, everybody. I'm Julie Griffith. I'm with the Indiana Innovation Institute, and we are pleased and very proud to be the partnership intermediary for Midwest Tech Bridge. And we're delighted that you're with us today. Sincere apologies for some technical glitches. We understand Teams in general has had a few issues today, but by golly, we found a workaround, and obviously a lot of you are watching your emails because you're on. So you get gold stars for being so ever present and up to speed on your communication. So thanks so much. This is our first large small business event. And we're just delighted that you could join us. We think it'll certainly be well worth your time. We've got a great program lined up. I'm probably the last person you want to hear from today because we do have so many people that I think you will find informative and to be great partners. Just a couple little things before we kick off with our first presenter. For those of you who aren't speaking, I hope you'll be able to mute your lines, and there is a chat function. If you notice the bar toward the bottom of your screen, there's a way to ask some questions along the way if you'd like, and we'll be monitoring those along the way. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited about the numbers because they continue to grow, which I think tells us our network is growing. To get us kicked off today, our first presenter is Ann Fields, who serves as Director of Midwest Tech Bridge. Ann has been with Crane for a number of years, but just joined her position in earnest in February. She's been a great partner, does a terrific job, and she's going to be able to provide with you this afternoon an overview of the Tech Bridge. So Ann, please, you have the floor. Ann, we lose you?
There we go. Better if I'm not on mute. Can you guys hear me now?
We can. Thank you.
Sorry, just one of those days with technical difficulties, guys. Just want to echo what Julie said. Just really appreciate your guys' time and participation today. This is the first small business event that we're having for the Midwest Tech Bridge, which we're really excited about. Later on in the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about the calendar of events that we plan to leverage going forward with the Tech Bridge that we hope that you guys can participate on. But for today, you've got a pretty awesome lineup of folks talking. So I'll just give a quick overview of NavalX and what the Midwest Tech Bridge goals are. And then we'll move on to Matt Burkett. He's our deputy for small business at NSWC Crane. So Eric, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about NavalX. So NavalX stands for the Naval Expeditions Agility Office, and it was started in February of 2019 by the Assistant Secretary for the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition, Mr. James Hondo Gertz. So the NavalX team has a physical space in Alexandria, Virginia, and there's kind of different sections of it. So I'll talk briefly about the NavalX team that's in Alexandria and then talk specifically about the Midwest Tech Bridge. So the team that's in Alexandria focuses on a couple different aspects. So Tech Bridge is being one of them, but as shown on the bottom of this slide, launch platforms is really kind of their digital toolbox of ways to kind of present things in a more agile manner, especially with COVID-19. Understandably, that's becoming more and more important to be able to get the message out to the ecosystems. They also focus on playbooks, which is really just a way to find, share, and facilitate rapid adoption of proven agility methods. So it's kind of the sharing that across the DoD, DON networks to be able to kind of get best practices into the hands of the practitioners as quickly as possible. Of course, awards and stories are important. So awarding folks for the work that they do to support the warfighter. And then lastly, tech bridges. So if we go on to the next slide, Derek, The tech bridges in red actually show the original 6. So those tech bridges actually were announced late in 2019, so sometime I think in September timeframe. But the Midwest Tech Bridge was one of the initial 6 tech bridges, and actually just Tuesday of last week they rolled out 6 more. So the network is growing. Mm-hmm. You guys just, I'm just going to remind to go on mute if you can, please. Yeah, so they rolled out 6 more tech bridges. So the network is growing rapidly, and it's really awesome from my perspective to participate in some of the conversations with the NavalX Tech Bridge team, because it's just really cool to see the perspectives of these different ecosystems from across our nation working together to solve problems for the warfighter and get solutions to the warfighter quicker. So Derek, if you could go on to the next slide, please. So this slide kind of illustrates the components of an ecosystem. So it's pretty easy to understand, but just to walk through it quickly, the left side of the slide illustrates you know, a small innovation group kind of working by themselves. And then, you know, when you kind of step forward a little bit, you get coordination of certain organizations working together. Sometimes that's based upon just relational, 2 people knowing each other and happening to make that connection. Sometimes that connection falls apart if those 2 people change positions or move on to a new organization. Of course, central coordination down in the bottom left-hand side shows kind of one central organization working with all of the folks around it and being that belly button to everything that's going on around them. And then really we start seeing innovation and collaboration at its best when we get into the micro ecosystem section there. So you see that there isn't just one person kind of coordinating everything or just one connection. It's really kind of a web of connections. And so that can, of course, happen in industry, that can happen in government, that can happen in academia. But our sweet spot, as illustrated on the slide on the right-hand side, is the intersection of all of those organizations. So kind of being that web, that enduring network of networks is our goal as a tech bridge in the Midwest region, to be that kind of that connective tissue between industry, academia, and government, and all of those innovation cells, the innovation groups, the coordination, all that. So we're trying to work on bringing that together. So here shortly, I'll describe how we plan to do that at the Midwest Tech Bridge. But Derek, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. This slide just illustrates what kind of a standard tech bridge might look like. So our goal is to continue to grow this ecosystem and continue to ensure communication and collaboration in the ecosystem and make it something that outlasts all of us. So as you guys know, IN3 is our partnership intermediary. So we heavily leverage their network. Of course, I'm new to this role. We may have a coordinator coming into this role as well to help with the tech bridge. But the idea is when all of us move on to new positions, this is an enduring, sustaining network that kind of has legs to stand on its own and be that connective tissue here in the Midwest for innovation. So next slide, please, Derek. So this slide really illustrates what the Midwest Tech Bridge is. And of course, this doesn't include everyone. This is just some of the folks that that are in our ecosystem. So a little bit of a picture of how we plan to move forward with this. My email is actually on this slide. So if anyone wants to get in touch and hasn't gotten in touch, please feel free to email me at ann.fields@navy.mil. Our regional coordinator will be hopefully coming online soon and participating in these events going forward. I think that's it for this slide. Next slide, please, Derek. Okay, so specifically talking about the Midwest goals and or Midwest Tech Bridge goals and how we see our success lining up. There are 3 here. I'm actually going to go out of order. I'm sorry if that offends anybody's sensibilities there, but we're going to start with number 2. So number 2 is expand and engage the internal and external network. So I spoke briefly about IN3 and our relationship with them through the PIA. We plan to leverage IN3's network heavily in this effort, but we also plan to leverage other folks' networks as well. So there are a lot of existing relationships between an SWC Crane employees and networking organizations in the ecosystem, and I'm slowly coming online with those. But as I make those connections, I plan to develop an email address or an email group that can kind of communicate widely with those members of the ecosystem who are kind of networkers. So anytime we have a Midwest Tech Bridge event, I plan to communicate with those folks, and that will be broadly distributed to the folks in this region in hopes of getting as much information out as we possibly can. That's the external network piece of it. There's obviously an internal network piece of this as well, and that's really inside the government. The inside Crane is really the internal network that I'm focused on currently. And that's the SMEs, the tip of the spear innovators, those folks who are most likely to have ideas of problems that we can find solutions for in the ecosystem. So the goal is to get those folks engaged at Crane and make sure that they understand our mission and they understand that we are trying to help bring solutions to the table for them. And those solutions aren't necessarily just that connection. Of course, we are a super connector, and that's really what we're focused on. But those relationships are also trying to find innovative ways to make things happen. So obviously, acquisition is a huge component to this. And so you guys will hear from Jenna Dix here in a little bit, our T2, our technology transfer director, and leveraging the CTO office at Crane, leveraging our contracts group, leveraging best practices and the playbooks that we discussed earlier from the NavalX team will play heavily into figuring out how to make some of this happen. And it's not always a square peg and a square hole. Is that right? Yeah, square peg, square hole. Sometimes we have to do a little work to figure out how to make the partnership work. So that's kind of number 2 with the expand and engage the internal and external network. We're going to hop down to number 3. One of the objectives with a lot of the tech bridges is to come up with a collaboration or innovation space in the community or communities around where the tech bridge resides. So clearly, looking at the map, the Midwest Tech Bridge has a big old space to cover. We're the only one kind of centrally located in our nation. So it isn't just specific to Indiana, it's really the whole Midwest region. But of course, kind of starting off, we're focused in getting some collaboration spaces built up in the area in and around Crane. And the idea here is where industry, academia, and other government agencies can come to this collaboration space and participate in problem solving, participate in perhaps small business events like we're doing today, and have it be a low barrier to entry, easy, comfortable place to come to. So there's something about having to have a visitor's pass or a CAT card and getting it scanned by a guy with an armed guard. We're trying to kind of lower those barriers to entry to where it's more comfortable for those non-traditional participants to come to the table and participate with some of the biggest problems for the DoD and the DON. So jumping back to number 1, the widely communicated and targeted calendar of events. So that's part of what we're doing here today. So part of the internal and external engagement that we discussed previously is going to be accomplished through this calendar of events. So if Derek, you could go to the next slide for me, please. This calendar of events kind of gives an overview of what we plan to do throughout the calendar year. And as we've gotten into this, it's become clear that we're really getting some granularity with each of the events about 3 or 4 months out for the smaller events like this one. Of course, we have the Midwest Defense Innovation Summit that's in October, a much larger event that has a lot more focus at this point. But with the idea of being agile, we are really focused on doing what is the most impactful at the time. So we really want to, if someone comes to us with a problem right now that we need to hit right now, we don't want to say, well, we've got, small business events and innovation challenges scheduled for the next 12 months. We can't focus on that right now. We really want to be adaptive. We want to be agile. We want to be able to hit the highest priority issues as they come to us. So this calendar, I hope, illustrates kind of where we plan to go over the next couple months. But I have found that it seems to be a little bit of a living, breathing organism of as we move forward, how we're just hitting what's most important at the time. I hope that makes sense. So we have the small business event where you see we're in May. We've got the small business event today. We actually have an innovation challenge coming up for AI small unit maneuver, which will be happening on June 3rd. I think the IN3 team will be sending that out shortly. But to kind of back up and talk a little bit about what we've done so far, this is our second large event. The first, we've actually had, well, I would say third. So the first one was a small business event we had in the South Bend region in early March, right before COVID happened, which was awesome and super informative. The folks that participated in that, some of the small businesses and industry members and academia folks that were there were hugely impactful and have really helped instruct the way that we're moving forward with the Tech Bridge. And then we had a technology demonstration on March 31st. And so that was it. Please mute your call or your line if you can, please. But we had a technology demonstration on March 31st, and it was supposed to be in person initially and actually vectored towards the digital realm. So we did that via Teams, and we had over 140 participants, and we're still thrilled with the amount of connections that came of that. So we had folks from different countries participating, different commands, folks linking up with SOCOM, from folks in places in South Bend. So really neat to see some of those connections and collaborations happen. So I'm happy to give more detail to anyone who's interested in this slide, or we can certainly share this slide deck so you can get a sense of what's coming up in the future. But this is kind of the battle rhythm that we plan to go with going forward. So I think that comes to the end of my slides. Will you go to the next slide, please, Derek? Yep. So I think that's it for me. Again, I just want to reiterate, I appreciate everyone's participation and being here. This is something, the small business events is something that we plan to do quite a bit going forward, and we may step out of the virtual environment and go to the communities in the Midwest. So plan to see us in Terre Haute and Lafayette and Evansville and Bloomington and South Bend. We're kind of going to hop around, and it'll generally be the same group of people that you see today. So hope that we will engage more folks, and we plan to always have hopefully have a digital component to this going forward as well. So if folks can't make it, we hope to have a recording of some sort so people can understand what we're doing. So if there are any questions of me, I will hand it over to Matt Burkett.
Matt, are you able to join?
Yes, you there?
Here.
Okay. Okay, we ready? All right. Again, my name is Matt Burkett. I'm the Deputy for Small Business at NSWC Crane. And just, again, kind of want to echo what Ann said. Just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Hope everyone is safe and healthy during this during these crazy times. But hopefully we can get back to some sort of normal here in short order. So again, thank you for your attendance. Next slide, please. Again, so like I said, I'm the Deputy for Small Business at NSWC Crane. So this slide here just kind of touches on what the Small Business Office does. So my main objective is to identify and advocate for the use of small businesses, both a prime contractor and a subcontractor. the other thing I do is review all procurement actions exceeding $10,000. So when reviewing those procurement actions above 10K, I'll look at what's called a DD 2579, and it's just a 2-page document. It's got some general information about the procurement as far as dollar value, some market research that's been conducted by the technical team and contracting, and then a little description about what the buy is. And at that point, that's really where I'm engaging contracting and the technical personnel to see where small business can participate. And first and foremost, I'm always looking at trying to find prime opportunities for small businesses. But if no prime opportunities exist, then we look to go down the subcontracting route. In order to set something aside for small business, as prime contractors, we have to have what's called the small business rule of 2, as you can see on the 3rd bullet point there. The small business rule of 2, that's determined based on market research that we've conducted internally and potentially responses to sources sought notices or RFIs or some public announcement that we've made to request vendor feedback. So if we have 2 or more small businesses, then we're definitely going to look to set aside if those businesses are technically capable of performing the work. Next slide, please. Okay, so like we just talked about, so we're going to conduct market research to try to find those small businesses or get a better idea of what the business landscape looks like. So here are a few things that we're going to use to conduct that market research. So you might see a sources sought or an advance notice. Typically, we're going to do those for some of our larger procurements. So our buys over $250,000 is typically where we're going to issue a lot of sources sought or advance notices to engage industry. Prior to COVID-19, we were trying to conduct a few more pre-solicitation conferences. Those would, in essence, we would invite folks on base. We would give them an opportunity to kind of see some of the equipment or see some of the facilities that they might be working in or working on, and speak to some of those technical experts on base. But then also give an opportunity for businesses to ask questions to the contracting folks to get a better idea of what the upcoming solicitation might look like. Another way we would do this is via a draft statement of work. If a draft statement of work is developed at the time of our market research, we'll try to post that, request feedback from industry to make any changes that we need to make, to where whenever we receive responses back to that formal solicitation, hopefully we've been able to kind of hash out any issues that we might have and hopefully streamline things at that point. But if you're a business that's kind of more geared towards some of our smaller dollar buys, our SAP buys, our simplified acquisition procedure buys, then one of the big tools we're going to use is the DSBS website, the Dynamic Small Business Search through the SBA. And so, complete DSBS profile. So we really encourage companies to have a full and complete DSBS profile, because that's one of our main market research tools that we use, especially for those smaller dollar buys. It's something that we can do very informally without having to send out a formal notice to request responses from industry. So the more information, the more complete your profile is, that makes it much easier for us to conduct market research and potentially reach out to you to request a quote or just give you the opportunity to bid. Next slide, please. So here's kind of a pie chart, an overview of what our spending mix and kind of what our work looks like at Crane as far as supply, service, R&D, that kind of thing. So this, I want to, before we get into this, I want to note that this pie chart here, this pie chart does include some what we call PEO program office work out of NAVC headquarters, where the work is performed at NAVC headquarters, but Crane does the contracting. So we've got about 50 task orders that are in that, add up to several $100 million a year in procurement actions that are included in this. So you'll see that our service piece of the pie is quite large. It's actually above 50% at this point, where, going years back, the pie was definitely weighted heavily towards supply. But so just wanted to point that out. But for our core Crane business, minus the PEO work, Crane is still very heavy in supply actions, just due to the customers we support, SOCOM, the Marine Corps, those folks. So we're still buying a lot of guns, bullets, those types of things, which play heavily into some of those supply numbers. But Crane on a whole last year, including our PEO work, we obligated about $1.6 billion in contract obligations, and that's been fairly consistent over the last several years. We've been, 1.4 billion, 1.6 billion. So we've stayed pretty constant as far as that goes. And currently, even with COVID-19, I can tell you from my seat, I haven't seen any slowdown in procurement actions coming out. So there's still a lot of opportunity for businesses to get involved in supporting our mission. Next slide, please. So this slide here is just to give you an idea of some of the top NAICS codes where we're obligating dollars. If you can see down at the bottom, for the service piece of the pie, you saw the service on the prior slide, 51% of our overall spend, that's coming out of that 541330 NAICS code, because that's heavy seaport, competitive technical services. So that's going to make up the bulk of that. But if you look at the large and the SAP NAICS codes, you'll see a lot of supply type NAICS codes there, and where, kind of how those fall in ranking for our work and our spend at Crane. But like I said, so if you're a service type contractor, though, the bulk of that spend is coming through that 541330 NAICS being issued via Seaport. Next slide. So let's kind of, move over to a little bit more about what we're buying. So we're still buying a lot of weapons, sensors. We're buying, we buy a lot of services, as you can see. Like I mentioned earlier, we're still, for the core Crane business, we're still heavily weighted toward supply type efforts, but we are buying a lot of sort of innovative services and a lot of engineering related services, cyber IT, AI, modeling and sim. If you guys are familiar with, with a lot of our Seaport actions, you can see, you can tell a lot of times that, 5 years ago, what was cyber? We weren't really doing a lot of that. Now you look at cyber components to a lot of our service contracts, and they make up a very sizable piece of the pie, which small business plays a key role in that. So, again, opportunities in those areas to get involved. Next slide, please. So at Crane, we're kind of divided up into 3 main mission sets. As you can see here, there are 4 bullets, but the bottom one, the corporate ops, rolls up into our strategic missions. But we have 3 main mission sets at Crane. Expeditionary warfare, electronic warfare, strategic missions, and like I said, our corporate ops and our command support rolls up into our strategic missions, or you might hear it referred to as global. But again, the corporate ops, I mean, that's very small business heavy work, business analysis. We have our base operations support service contract being handled by small business, HR support, those types of things being handled by small businesses. And we're always looking for, especially in the three main tech areas, we're always looking to find new opportunities. Again, going back to those sub and prime opportunities, to where, part of my job as the small business deputy is to, like I said, promote the use of small business, whether it be as a prime or a subcontractor, but also, continuing to try to grow that small business vendor base. So, if there's a requirement that's typically done by a large business, taking a look at that requirement to see if we can increase that small business participation amount to give small businesses more opportunity, to where 5 years when that contract, 4 or 5 years when that contract's recompeted, that small businesses hopefully have increased capabilities, and we might be able to set that aside down the road, just due to the additional opportunities that we've given smalls as subcontractors along the way. Next slide, please. So this is a little snapshot of how we're buying, kind of what dollar thresholds are important to us, that we sort of play by. So anything from, anything up to $10,000 is considered micro purchase. I really don't have any influence over those. Those are just credit card buys. Those are done very quick. So no documentation is sent my way to review. The process is very informal. It's not until you get north of 10,000 into what we call the simplified acquisition process that I get involved. So anywhere from north of 10,000 to 25,000 is sort of called our informal SAP. Those procurement actions they're not identified on what's now Beta SAM. What used to be, if you guys are familiar with FBO.gov, that's now Beta SAM. I'm sure most of you know, but I still call it FBO from time to time. But those $10,000 to $25,000 actions are not advertised. So it's important, that folks take advantage of networking events sort of like this, informational sessions like this, to try to get to know players involved, get to know Ann, get to know Jenna, get to know myself, to where we can sort of help plug you in, whenever they're, small dollar buys might be repetitive. That way our folks inside the gate sort of know who you are. Once you get north of 25,000, it's our, from 25,000 to 250,000. That's our formal simplified acquisition procedure process there. So those acquisitions are going to be advertised on Beta SAM. So some of those might have extremely quick turnaround times on them. So I always try to encourage businesses to one, check Beta SAM often. Whenever you're on Beta SAM, always telling companies up at the top, go to contract action at the top of the page, type in N00164, and that will pull up everything that's available on Beta SAM coming out of Crane. So that's a great way to kind of filter through. I know companies reach out a lot of times and say, hey, there's 1,000 different actions on here and I don't know who they're supporting and whatnot. If you want to see specifically what's coming out of Crane, search using that N00164. Now, you're probably not going to find, if you're a service contractor, you're probably not going to find a lot of service efforts on there. Again, the bulk of our service actions are procured through Seaport. We do procure some services through Beta SAM, but they're not quite as heavy as they are in Seaport. Once you get north of $250,000, then you get into our large contract and our seaport. So the reason they're divided here, large contract is typically for supply efforts. There are some sole source services are procured via what we would call large contract or outside of seaport. If it's a competitive, what's considered a competitive technical service, we are most likely going to buy that utilizing Seaport, what's now Seaport Next Gen, what used to be Seaport E. Next slide, please. So with small businesses, what are some things that you can do to help? So here are some big ones. I mean, one, if you're brand new to the government, if you just got your SAM account, you're registered, you've got your cage code, that type of thing, research what we buy. That's an important thing. Come with a bit of a plan. I mean, we all, I know that the companies, trying to work with the government can sometimes be difficult. But do a little bit of research on Crane. Try to figure out where you might be able to fit prior to interaction with us if you can, because that just helps make things a lot easier. We have an idea of where you're looking. We'll do our best to, based on what you tell us, to try to figure out where you might fit, but sort of have an idea of where you would like to go. We have a lot of public information. I mean, you can go to the Crane website and you can see a lot of public information available as far as what we do, who we are, those types of things. The Crane overview, you can get a copy of that and just sort of, start to kind of feel your way out. Another way to do that is to go to Beta SAM or sites like that to figure out what's Crane buying, how often are they buying it, and what quantities, those types of things that might help. Again, if Crane's not the place for you, I would always encourage you to try to find your target market within DoD. If Crane's not the place for you, I guarantee you there is probably a place for you within DoD or the Department of Navy somewhere. I'm sure somewhere someone is buying what you sell, but Crane may not be that fit, and we can do it. We'll do what we can to try to guide you in the right direction to find that place that might be buying what you sell. Explore subcontracting opportunities. I mean, this is a big one, especially for the new businesses. I always try to tell them, start small before you go big. Working with the government, it's a process. It's not easy in the beginning, and I don't want to lie to you and tell you it is. There are some things that are different than the private sector, as I'm sure some of the businesses that have worked with the government can tell you. But once you kind of crack the code, it's really not that bad. It's just following the process and knowing where to look and sort of, how to submit invoices and those types of things, how to respond to solicitations and RFIs and those things. So, but subcontracting is a great way to get plugged in. Again, attending network events like this, if down the road if things go back to normal, who knows, trying to attend some of those in-person networking events like the Midwest Defense Innovation Summit that's scheduled for October. Try to link up with some of these companies on social media. A lot of the big companies that we work with, I mean, they have social media, or LinkedIn profiles, those types of things. Try to connect with them that way, just to try to get a conversation started. Another thing you can do is reach out to me. I do have large businesses that reach out to me looking for small businesses in particular areas, and just trying to provide, names back to them of, here are several contractors that have reached out looking for opportunities to sub. They may or may not call you. Some are better than others, but that's another way. That's another way to do it. Providing effective source assault responses. I can't tell you how important this is, especially if you're a company that wants to play in Seaport or play in some of those larger dollar procurements where we are doing a lot more, formal source assault announcements. If you have questions about information in those RFIs. I would encourage you, at the bottom of every RFI announcement, there is a contracting point of contact, to reach out to them for clarification. If you're not getting satisfaction, feel free to reach out to me, and I can get with them. I'm a former KO. I spent 12 years in contracting, so I know the folks well. I kind of know how to speak their language. So, use me as a resource to get to them. If you're not getting, satisfaction, I can tell you contracting folks are extremely busy. So sometimes it's, the communication might be a little slow. If it is, feel free to use me as a tool. Another thing is maintain awareness. Maintain awareness of the current regulations. I mean, there are a couple of regulations that have recently changed, and when I say recently, in the past year and a half, that really benefit small business. Especially with the limitation on subcontracting. With that rule change, allowing, we're used to in the past, small businesses had to do above 50% of the work, where now that's not the case. Small business can team with what they call a similarly situated entity, a similarly situated small business, where two could team together, possibly three could team together to meet that above 50% requirement, and start to go after actions as prime contractors where they may not have been able to in the past. So that's a huge thing that, we're trying to encourage contractors to try to leverage. So again, networking as a subcontractor, but also networking in this fashion to where you can put together a solid team to start to go after actions that may have been full and open efforts in the past. So please, try to utilize that as a way to get your, as a way to kind of get your foot in the door. Next slide, please. This is just some industry outreach. Again, these are things that we used to do a lot of, as Ann mentioned, kind of the Crane Roadshow. This is sort of a version of what we used to call the Crane Roadshow, where we would go through and talk about how to do business with Crane. We would try to hit it from all aspects. So that's one thing that we do. The Tuesday meet and greets prior to COVID, that used to be a very popular sort of event, I guess, that I would have out at Westgate. Just meeting with companies, especially those new companies who have a lot of questions, and just kind of sitting down with them on a one-on-one basis and allowing them to ask whatever it is that they may have a question about. Seaport E, man, I need to update this. It's now Seaport Next Gen, but the town hall meetings, that's a great way, especially if you're a small business. A small business Seaport contractor who's interested in learning about the latest and greatest things coming out of Seaport. That's a great way to kind of stay up to date on that. APBI is an event we have every other year. 2021 will be an APBI year, and then of course the big small business event that we have is the Buy Indiana Expo, which we had to cancel this year due to COVID-19. But the plan is to still press forward with that in April of 2021. So next slide, please. Just a couple useful websites, nothing that I'm sure you guys haven't seen before. So these are just a couple websites that I encourage small businesses to use, especially if they're new and don't really, still kind of looking for good informational sites. One really good one is the DoD Office of Small Business Programs. I mean, that's a great site to kind of. It's kind of a full meal deal. I mean, you get all different kinds. I mean, you can hit it from all the Department of Defense installations, and you can kind of drill down, just kind of going to that site. You can pull up long range acquisition forecast to kind of get a better idea of how to plan and what's upcoming at the different sites. Again, there's opportunities, the betasam.gov. We do have what's called an OTA, another transaction authority. That's our OTA consortium manager is NSTXL. So they're so the smarts. So our OTA is called S2 Smarts or S2 Marts or Smarts, you might hear it referred to. So there's the site for that. If you're kind of one of those new non-traditional, innovative contractors. The OTA might be a great avenue for you to kind of dip your toe in the water when it comes to government contracting. It's a little bit different, but it's a great way to kind of, learn the ropes, get to know people, and then maybe look to transition into some of those formal FAR-based government contracts that I tend to deal in. So that's another great resource. Two other plugs here real quick. If you're an Indiana-based business and you don't know your PTAC, I encourage you to get to know your PTAC. Every state has a PTAC, but the Indiana PTAC, I can tell you, I've worked with a lot. I've been to several states, talked to a lot of businesses, and I can tell you our Indiana PTAC is the best one that I've worked with. So they're a great resource. Chris Jeffers, she's the state director. You can check out their website and figure out, who your PTAC director is based on your region, and reach out to them. The small business development centers, Steve Bryant's the local one here in the Bloomington area. He's great about sending out information, working with small businesses, especially those new businesses, just trying to help them get off the ground. And he's always pushing businesses, our way, trying to connect those new those non-traditionals, those really small businesses with what's going on at Crane, and trying to plug them into the ecosystem. So, Steve's another great resource as far as that goes. Next slide, please. And there's my contact information. If you have any questions, anything small business related, if you're looking for large businesses to try to prime with, whatever the case may be, there's my information. Feel free to reach out, and we'll try to connect. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your participation. And hopefully you enjoy the rest of the presentations.
Hey, thanks so much, Matt. You did a great job. I always learn something from you, no matter how many times I have the pleasure of listening to one of your presentations. You always add a new element from which I can take something away. There was one question from someone, and then we'll move to Jenna, but if you could answer this. There was a gentleman who asked if you focus only on small business or non-traditional defense contractors as well.
Can you say that again? You broke up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. My internet connectivity, shall we say, has been a little dicey lately. The question, everybody who knows me knows that. Do you focus on small business only, or do you also do work with non-traditional defense contractors as well?
So primarily, we do a lot of work with small business. That's the focus. But those non-traditionals, I'm very willing to work with. I want to work with more. You want to try to bring them in and get them involved, to where, down the road, they can definitely look to support us on a larger scale. So if you're a non-traditional business and you're just interested in working with the government, feel free to give me a call. I'd love to connect with you and try to see where you could, fit in supporting our mission.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate, once again, you're taking the time and giving such a great presentation. Next, we have the pleasure of hearing from Jenna Dix. Both Ann and Matt have referenced her, and I have the pleasure of working with Jenna as well on a number of things. But Jenna leads Crane's technology transfer efforts and is the director there. So Jenna, you have the floor.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here today. Let's see, let's go ahead to the first slide. So what I want to do today is give you a full understanding of what technology transfer is, because the opportunities that are offered through our program are very different from what Matt presented on the contracting or small business side. So I think first I'd like to show you a short video just so that you can kind of get a better understanding of what technology transfer is, and then we'll talk through some more of the details. Volume. Whoa, technical difficulties. Derek, do we have the volume for the video?
Our phones, even our, but do you know
Hey, Derek, the audio is really breaking up.
Materials and devices.
Maybe we should skip the video. That's too bad, because it was a really great kind of introduction to what technology transfer is. I'll try to share that with you all in another forum. So Derek, if you could go to my next slide. Okay, thank you. So technology transfer is all about leveraging the resources that are within the federal laboratories for the benefit of the local economy. So the idea here is that we want to ensure that you all have access to the valuable assets of the federal labs. So when you think about it, all of the research and development and all of the efforts that go on inside the laboratory system are paid for with taxpayer dollars. So where appropriate, it is our mission to ensure that the private sector has access to those assets and can leverage those resources for their own benefit. So, we're encouraging economic growth and promoting dual use technologies. And we do this in a few different ways, but primarily these assets that we like to talk about are our knowledge, so our intellectual property, our technical data, our technical experts, specialized equipment, and facilities that you'll find within the gates of Crane and the other federal labs that you might not generally see in the commercial market. And if you could go to the next slide, Derek. So the resources that we have available and that we really try to work in the tech transfer program to make sure that you all are aware of and have access to are listed here on the left side. So the first is our intellectual property. So our intellectual property portfolio consists of about 500 patents at this point in time. And what's really exciting about the intellectual property portfolio that we have at Crane is that because Crane is a tech transition laboratory, and what that means is our mission is to get technology into the hands of the warfighter. So because that is the case, the majority of our portfolio is prototyped and fielded, which means that when it comes to a small business or a startup who wants to take that technology and transition it into the commercial marketplace, they have a much better, it's a lot easier whenever we've got something that's prototyped and fielded and we have, tech data packages and drawings and things like that, as opposed to something that might be more in the early stages. Additionally, our portfolio is really young. So Crane didn't really put an emphasis on capturing the intellectual property that was being developed within our lab until maybe 10, maybe 15 years ago. So what you'll find is that when you look at our portfolio, a lot of the patents are new and fresh, which means that they have a long life on them, which is definitely always appealing for potential licensing and then investors to look at as well. So the subject matter expert. So this is one of the, I think, really unique and exciting things that Crane has to offer. So within our gates, we have over 2,000 scientists and engineers who are subject matter experts in their particular technical area. And in many cases, they're available to assist you. We have mechanisms that we can put in place, which I'll talk about here in a few minutes, but that will allow them to, assist you in research and development efforts that are going on within your small business, help you to solve some of the tough technical problems that you're working on. So that's a really valuable resource. And in a lot of cases, the scientists and engineers at Crane are excited to work with small businesses and startups on their technical problems. And then the bottom two kind of go hand in hand. So this is our specialized equipment and facilities and the various testing service capabilities that we have. So when you think about it, a lot of the things that we do at Crane are very specialized. We have a lot of state-of-the-art laboratories and capabilities that you're not going to find in the commercial marketplace. And we have mechanisms that we can put in place that will allow you to access these resources. Maybe you want to come in and use our equipment for particular testing, or you want us to perform testing for you. Those are all things that the technology transfer program can enable. And then on the right side, what is depicted there are just a variety of different high-level areas that we work in. So Matt mentioned the 3 main technical areas at Crane that may or may not mean something to you, but I'm sure you understand, you know, optics and lasers and small arms, weapons and accessories, electronics, RF antennas, those types of things. So this isn't an exhaustive list, but it's just an idea to, you know, just to give you an idea of the variety of technologies that we have available. Next slide, please. So when it comes to how we actually partner, these are the ways in which we do that. So these are all not acquisition tools like the things that Matt was talking about in his presentation. These are outside of the federal acquisition regulation, and for the most part are in-kind types of efforts where we can partner with industry to perform some type of function. So the top one that you'll see, that Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, this is by far our most popular technology transfer agreement because it's a really flexible mechanism that allows us to partner with non-federal entities. So this is the main vehicle that would give you access to the expertise, the equipment, the facilities, the technical data, whatever it is that you might be looking for to access from the lab. We also use these agreements to support technology commercialization efforts. So if you're interested in a patent license, but in order to commercialize a piece of intellectual property, you would like assistance from the subject matter expert that developed it, then the Cooperative Research and Development Agreement can enable you access to that person, maybe you know, some help with prototyping or getting manufacturing things in line, whatever it may be. But those are definitely very popular agreements. And like I said, they're really flexible. And over the last several years, we've really worked hard to reach out to our local universities and industry so that we can, you know, be sure that we can partner using these mechanisms in a way that's beneficial to everybody. Next is the testing services. So this is the type of thing where we may have a capability that you can't find in the commercial sector, and you're basically asking us to perform like a fee for service type of activity. So we do a lot of battery work. We have you know, one of the largest organic electronic warfare capabilities, along with the same on radiation hardened microelectronics. So there's a lot of capabilities within our base that you're not going to find elsewhere. And so we use these testing service agreements to ensure that small businesses have access to those facilities. The patent license agreement kind of speaks for itself. This is basically our ability to give you the right to make or use technologies that were developed by Crane. And then lastly, the Education Partnership Agreement. This is all about assisting universities and educational institutions in enhancing STEM education. So we use these to loan equipment, to do guest lectures, to help university faculty and local K through 12 schools develop curriculum, those types of things. Next slide. Okay, so this is something that I always like to point out when I talk to folks, and Brooke, if you're still participating, you'll recognize this slide for sure. This is what we call our partnership wheel. So the idea here is that every time somebody comes to us and has a desire to partner, the very first thing that we want to do is understand what your desired outcome is. So we want to be able to be sure that we know what the S&E from Crane is trying to get out of the partnership, but also what you're looking for, because we certainly want to make sure that however we structure a partnering arrangement, it's going to be beneficial for you and you're going to get that desired outcome. And it may or may not be something that is tech transfer related. So the bottom two circles down there depict various technology transfer agreements that we just talked about, but then there are a lot of other things that are in here that are outside of my particular program. So you know, we might not be looking at just a cooperative research and development agreement. We might be looking at an OTA opportunity or a grant, or maybe it's an SBIR, or maybe there's a mix of a variety of different agreements that we need to put in place in order to achieve the outcome. But so the idea here is really just that we understand what the objective is, and then we kind of come to our toolbox and look at all the different possible ways that we could structure a partnership, and that we structure that in a way that's going to be beneficial for everyone. Next slide. Okay, so why is tech transfer important? So I really like to talk about this as a twofold objective, and the first being economic impact. So supporting the growth in our regional innovation ecosystem by providing access to resources that are going to be of value to small business and startups, and hopefully, take off a little bit of the burden that they experience by providing opportunities to partner with us. There's also opportunities to transition technology into the commercial marketplace through patent licenses. So making technologies that were developed at Crane or by the government available for use by small businesses and startups. And then the other objective here, and should come of no surprise to any of you, but is to enhance the warfighting capabilities. So when it comes down to it, we are a warfare center, and our primary objective is to support the warfighters. So through technology transfer, we also try to focus on ensuring that we're bringing the best solutions to bear on the problems that are facing our warfighters. So we know that we may not always have all of the expertise that it takes to solve a particular problem, and we need our partners in industry, and we need our partners in academia to help us solve a lot of these problems. So it's really just about bringing the best solutions to bear on these problems, and ensuring and knowing that we are stronger together as opposed to on our own. Next slide. So this is just a quick look at what our partnerships within the region look like. So within Indiana, we have about 60 what I would call technology-based partnerships. So these are tech transfer-based partnerships. These aren't, acquisition relationships, but you can tell by the graphic that, we're clustered in areas like Bloomington and Indianapolis and South Bend and West Lafayette. The really exciting thing I think about this slide is that, if you would have looked at this 4 or 5 years ago, you would have seen a few stars on this slide, but you wouldn't have seen anything like what you see today. And that is from not just the commitment from the folks at Crane, but the commitment from the folks in the region, in the state, at the state government, at the highest levels of the university, with organizations like IN3 helping to pull folks together. We're really seeing this growth in our state and this partnering. And again, it goes back to that, stronger together type of mentality. Next slide. So this is a little bit of a busy slide, but I'm just going to speak to the high points. So to go back a little bit on this economic impact, and one of the reasons that we do and that we invest in technology transfer is it really does have an impact on our regional economy. So one of our partners based out of Montana State University, they are called TechLink. They're a partner at the DoD level and support all of the Department of Defense, but they do economic impact analyses. And what their most recent impact analysis on license agreements showed that just from the licenses at NSWC Crane, there's a $62 million direct economic impact. And when you look at, induced and indirect impact, you get into this $160 million impact on the economy through license agreements. So, there really is value here, and it's not always easy to take a technology and to transfer it into the commercial marketplace, but there's definitely there is value here. And then on the bottom there, the cooperative research and development agreements, TechLink took a look at those as well and found that based on about 200 cooperative research and development agreements between Crane and industry and academia, there was $2.8 billion in sales. So these are products that are being generated as a direct result of the relationship and the research that was done under the CRADA. So companies are seeing a lot of value from partnering with Crane and with the labs as a whole, the defense labs as a whole. And one of the really exciting things in my mind, because it goes back to that number 2 on that, why is this important, is that 2.6 of the 2.8 billion in sales was sales back to the US military. So that means we were partnering with a company to develop a product, to further a product, to make that product ready for use by the US military. And we were doing that through a CRADA. And the end result was the government buying product back. So that's that's economic impact and support to the warfighter all rolled up into one. Next slide, please. So in that vein, given the interesting and concerning times that we're living in right now, and particularly the strain that we're feeling on the economy, we are doing a special rapid licensing program. And so what we're doing is we're offering time-limited, royalty-free patent licenses on all of the technologies within our portfolio. So we've seen the Department of Energy and a few other federal labs do the same thing in offering these types of special licensing programs right now. And the idea is to just reduce that barrier for companies and startups to come and get this technology and make good, solid use of it. So the details are listed here on the slide, which you all will have available. But basically, we're talking about non-exclusive licenses, 18 months royalty-free if the technology is being used in support of the pandemic, 12 months royalty-free otherwise. And then all of the Crane technologies can be found at this techlinkcenter.org website. You can actually search all of the DoD technologies within all of the DoD labs at that site as well. But if you want to go and take a look there or reach out to myself, and you'll see my contact information on, I think the next slide, we'd be happy to talk to you about how you can participate in this program. Next slide. So the last couple of things that I'll say here with these last 2 slides is about the Federal Laboratory Consortium. So this is the network of all of the federal laboratories in the US. So it includes not just the Department of Defense, but National Institutes of Health, Department of Energy, NASA. So basically, all of these organizations, when it comes to tech transfer, are bound together to work together towards promoting technology transfer and the awareness of the availability of the resources of the federal lab system. So if you think that you might be interested in partnering with the federal lab or tapping into some of the expertise that they may have, but Crane doesn't appear to be in your wheelhouse, then you can check out the FLC website and find a federal lab that meets your need. So I know several of these folks across the network of labs. The great thing is, Derek, if you flip to the next slide, they have a platform called FLC Business that is basically an access database of all of the federal laboratories in the US, where you can find their capability, their intellectual property, any kind of specialized equipment that they may have, facilities that you may access. And there's also points of contact listed with both of them. But if you don't, if you don't find a person, or you would like a personal connection to another lab, then please feel free to reach out to me and I can make that happen for you. And I believe the next slide is the last one with contact information for myself and my team.
Thanks, Jenna. Terrific job.
Yeah.
Sorry about your video. I've had through the chat several people ask for the link, so we'll be sure and get that out. And it's just the technological world in which we currently live. But anyway, terrific job, and thanks for your time. Next, we have Chris Jeffers. Matt Burkett referenced Chris. She certainly has a reputation for the tremendous work that she's done with PTAC for a number of years. She's the statewide director for Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. So Chris, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Oh man, I want to apologize in advance. I've been having internet connection problems as well. I don't know what's going on, but in the city of Indianapolis, I've been disconnected a couple times. So I apologize in advance if something happens. Thank you, Julie, for always including me. You're a great partner. Great opportunity for all businesses to make sure they stay connected with IN3. They always know what's going on. Also, Matt, always a great partner. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Chris Jeffers. I'm with Indiana PTAC. Next slide. So who are we and what do we do? We are a federally funded program with the state of Indiana, as well as the state of Indiana. There, as Matt said, there's a PTAC in every state. These are the regions that we have in the state of Indiana. We have 5 different regions, and there's a counselor in each one of those locations. Right now in the Northeast, Fort Wayne area, that position is vacant. We were getting ready to fill that before the stay-at-home order, so we'll be revisiting that here hopefully very quickly. But we do one-on-one counseling. We basically do all those things Matt and everyone's been talking about, the research, the market research, who's buying what you're selling. We will help you. We will do all that for you. We're a free resource. So please reach out to us and let us help you. We also have a bid matching service. So as Matt mentioned, Beta SAM is continuously evolving. If you haven't noticed yet, FPDS has now rolled into it as well. It still exists, but it will be going away as well as the other websites have. But we have a free bid match service that once you become a client of ours, we build you a profile, and it will email you opportunities throughout the federal government that you could be making submittals on. Certifications, registrations, whether that is obviously just getting started, just your SAM registration, to other certifications, registrations, whether it's being HubZone or women-owned business, service disabled veteran, those type of certifications that will help you give you some privilege in the federal contracting world. Networking opportunities, I know all of us have said it, so I think it's very interesting that I'm going to say it again, how important that is. I always tell people that it's just people behind those computers, that contracting officers are real people, and all these businesses are real. So it's so critical to take the time to go and participate in networking opportunities. And maybe it's not about the subject matter, but who's going to be there? Who's going to be at that event that you can get in front of and you can meet and start networking with? All those things are so critical in building your business in the federal government world. Next slide. What's been going on at the Indiana PTACs with COVID-19? So the PPE effort starting in late March was pretty significant. As you may all be aware, the states were individually in charge, if you will, of getting PPE products for their state. We work closely with BD at IEDC in that effort, and a lot of small businesses in Indiana. It was so rewarding to see so many businesses willing to change what they do or step up and do what they could to help the state and the country out during this the pandemic. It's just really was a very rewarding outcome, if you will, of what we've all been going through. What's going on now is opening trends and needs. We're starting to see a big need for contracts at the state level just for opening up buildings. State offices all have to be cleaned. They have to be disinfected. There's tenting, testing sites. And so we may be migrating out of the urgency of the masks and the gloves and kind of moving into that next phase of getting everyone ready to go back to work and go back into the office. We've also been working on cybersecurity, and as everyone knows in the DoD world, the CMMC efforts. Unfortunately, during this time, we have seen an incredible increase in cyber attacks, fake websites, fake emails. Bad people have taken advantage of people in a vulnerable state. And unfortunately, this time we've seen just such a rise in that, that it makes CMMC a little bit more on the front end for the state of Indiana, just because the cyber health of your company, whether you're going to do DoD work or not, is very critical to protect your data. And I think that as we all started working remotely, everyone now has realized how important computers and data on your computer is. So you need to protect that. And so we have been working with Purdue MEP, Gene Jones has been great. And we're going to be rolling out some workshops and some trainings in 20 topics in 10 weeks, trying to get people ready to get that CMMC certification, as well as just having good cyber health. So looking forward to providing that service to Indiana small businesses. Certifications are changing during this time. We issued an email yesterday or the last week, women-owned businesses, federal government. So in the past, SBA has allowed some self-certification of women-owned businesses. Some third-party certifications were allowed. However, that is all changing. So starting in July, you will have to upload your certification and you'll have to submit for approval from the SBA to receive a woman-owned business. So you may have already been certified in the past, doesn't matter. You still have to create an account and go on the system, and we have all that information, but that's changing. And that by October of 2020, this year, you will have to prove that you have that certification from SBA to bid on federal contracts. So it's really critical. We definitely don't want to lose anybody to get to that point. We saw just an incredible amount of increase in federal contracting for clients. So Matt and I even talked about this early on. As commercial needs kind of dried up, if you will, the need to supplement that with a new customer became the federal government. And so there were a lot of companies that we've been after for a long time to get in the game and start doing federal contracting and getting SAM, and maybe they weren't ready yet or didn't have the time. And this really made it so apparent to everybody to get in the system, get registered. So we probably saw triple the amount of new clients. SAM registrations, they've had a backlog now of a week just to get cage codes, just because of the increased supply chain, basically, of people that want to do federal contracting. And whether that was FEMA, whether that was USDA for the food and agricultural, that's coming out here soon. We see as an increase of any business in Indiana wanting to do federal contracting helps out all federal contracting. So we've been really focusing on getting those clients registered and ready to go. Next slide. Talk a little bit about fiscal year 20 federal spending in Indiana. These are the top 5 agencies. As you can see, Department of Defense was $3.81 billion. Seems like a lot, but compared to the rest of the nation, it is not. So that's what we're focusing on in the future. Brandy Hughes, I know, is on the line somewhere. She said, I want to shout out to her. She's with IEDC and Defense Development as well. And that's what we've been really focusing on in the last, well, she has been for years, but the defense has a new emphasis of trying to increase that amount of dollars, of defense dollars, coming back to the state of Indiana. And you'll see where there's some other federal agencies. I do want to say the one that has been increasing nationwide is NASA. A lot of that has to do with SpaceX, but NASA is doing a lot in research and development. So you'll see NASA increasing across the board in the next year or so. Next slide. DOD, let's talk about DOD for a minute. They'll update these slides. SBA will update these slides soon. Yeah. But I want to talk about small businesses and the importance of small business in Department of Defense. This is just Department of Defense. And I want you to see, their goal is 23%, but I want you to see how much money they did. That's a B, that's for billion. It's $72 billion that.
You don't have to work?
Yeah, why not?
Can you mute that?
Yeah. What hospital?
Not
here. Not here. Where?
There she goes. I want everyone to see how much money that is. That means in 1 year, the Department of Defense spent $72 billion to small businesses. So that's huge. Women-owned business, I have to say, from this list of their goals, there were 2 goals that the DoD missed. And as you may know, the SBA gives each agency a report, basically a report card and a grade of how they did. And Department of Defense failed on women-owned businesses and hub zones. So you can imagine the competitiveness of DoD, and they're going to make sure they try to hit that this year. So it's important that we have those women-owned small businesses certified with the new process. We also are working with DCMA. They've reached out to us. They have a new push of getting more items commercially approved. So we sent something out with them a couple weeks ago. We hope to have a webinar with them So they're trying to increase federal spending that way. So I think, and then partnership with SBA. I know Vernice is on here. Marty Anderson with SBA has been a great partner through all this, through their PPE loans and our PPP loans, and just providing guidance to small businesses during their urgent needs. So next slide. So this is some information about IEDC. My program, or Indiana PTAC, is a part of IEDC. This is how you can follow them and get a hold of them if you need to. But of course, you can go to our website as well. I think the next slide is my information. Again, I just want to encourage everybody to stay connected. I think that we have started to build a really good communication system among Julie and other partners. And if I don't know something, I'll call Julie and ask her if she's heard, or she'll do the reverse back to me. Matt and I talk all the time. And so just ask one of us. Please just, realize there are resources out there that are there to help you. And if I don't know the answer, I will find out. And we've just built a great team. So Julie, thank you again for hosting and for letting me participate.
Oh, thanks, Chris. You always do a great job. Hey, one question did come up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you may have addressed it in after the question was asked, but the question was, will PTAC be Indiana's CMMC certifier?
Ha, is that from Gene?
No, it is not.
Oh, he should know better. I told him not to ask me any questions if he's on. So DOD with the CMMC requirements, Katie Arrington mentioned the CMMC accreditation body is at least up and running now. There's also a system called Project Spectrum that is the Department of Defense small business consultant, if you will. I'm going to be hosting an event with them here in Indiana, hopefully in July, where I can get them to come here. But they did mention PTAC's involvement with the CMMC review process. And so basically what's going to happen is I will have someone on staff that will not be an assessor, but we will be a reviewer. So someone at the Indiana PTAC, and every PTAC statewide will have a reviewer on staff to help small businesses through that process. So yes.
Okay, thank you. And one more question came across. Yeah. Is there a temporary lead person at the Fort Wayne location?
Me.
Oh, good. You're expanding your responsibilities, Chris. Fabulous.
I try as much as I can, but right now, yes, it's me. So, so just give me a call or send me an email.
Yes, I know you need one more thing to do, Chris, but fabulous job. Thank you as always for being such a great partner. I'm just
impressed that my internet worked, and I threatened all 3 of my teenage boys this whole hour about making any noise. So they've, I basically locked them outside, so they did okay.
Okay, well, again, thank you so much. Next and last, but I think you'll find this to be a really useful exercise here, is a small business panel. And we have with us Tom Budd, who is the solutions manager for MTI Welding, Aaron Pierce, who's the CEO of Pierce Aerospace, and then Bradford Thorne, who is an electrical engineer. He's an R&D engineer for IF Battery. And in the interest of full disclosure, I didn't know any of these gentlemen until just a few months ago. They have been incredibly engaged in our Midwest Tech Bridge efforts. They all participated in the tech demo, which was on March 31st. But I thought it might be valuable for the group to hear from, small business owners, and although some might not be owners, they've all had different experiences, and they're frankly very, very different industries. So I hope Tom, Aaron, and Bradford are on. Can you tell me if you are?
I am here. Tom Budd.
Oh, I heard 3 voices. Hey, I love it when technology works. Can you guys still hear me? It looks like my...
Yes.
Okay, because my screen is frozen. So just to level set for everybody, perhaps each one of you can just provide a brief overview of your respective companies. So let's start with A, and Aaron, so if you could perhaps provide a brief overview of Pierce Aerospace.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pierce Aerospace is focused on a dual use identity management system for unmanned aircraft and unmanned systems. In the commercial and civilian world, it's called remote ID, but we're also heavily focused on identification of friend or foe for the defense side. So we've been engaged with this on the unmanned systems world with the FAA for a little while. We work with them on their on the FAA's remote ID cohort as a team member to Intel. And we're very excited and happy to work on this kind of bridging of cyber and physical to bring new identity technologies out to the marketplace.
Thank you. Bradford?
Hi, IF Battery or IFB, we're primarily focused around development of new flow battery technologies that produce simultaneous electricity and hydrogen in tunable quantities. So it's a lithium-free technology that is indefinitely storable. And so we're very interested in some of the nonlinear power capabilities that we've been finding with this. And it allows us to operate in some pretty interesting environments and applications. And so we've been doing a lot of development recently in a few different areas, specifically around in situ resource utilization, battery support in very austere environments and climates where we're insensitive to very low temperatures where we don't have power degradation there, as well as stationary backups, fuel cell, and combustion assist where we can reduce specific fuel consumption. So we're very excited about some of the things that we're working on within that area and how we can support the warfighter.
Thank you. And Tom Budd from MTI Welding, could you tell us a little bit about MTI?
Hey, everybody. Sure, MTI actually stands for Manufacturing Technology, Inc. We've been around forever, 92 years, so we're not a startup by any stretch of the imagination, but we specialize in friction welding or joining critical metals and alloys for a lot of different products. And MTI is headquartered in South Bend. We have 2 facilities, so we actually manufacture the equipment that welds the parts, and then we have a contract welding service as well, also in South Bend. And we are a global company. We do have a couple other locations, but so we have worked with the Air Force and other government agencies in the past to weld critical components and DoD type projects. And so most recently, we've developed a new technology that's related to friction welding. It's a different form and has a lot of advantages as far as lowering costs, lowering the sizes of the pieces of equipment that are required, and doing the process faster. And friction welding things are used in all industries, not just in military, from golf clubs to jet engine components.
Golf clubs, I need to talk to you. No, I'm kidding. Thanks all of you. You know, I think I mentioned a few minutes ago that all of you participated in the tech demonstration on March 31st. We had 140 participants on that and 11 different presentations. Each of these gentlemen, again, provided a terrific overview of their capabilities. But as a result of that, I think each one of you have received follow-up. Either from Crane or from others who participated or from other surface warfare centers. So could each of you perhaps kind of explain what your experience has been then since that time and what's transpired? And Tom, since I made you go last, you get to go first this time.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so we did participate. It's the first time that we participated in the webinar. And by the way, I wanted to thank both you, Ann, and Dave Tamelis for setting up the Midwest Tech Bridge meeting up in South Bend. That was early March, and you guys made the trip. And that's kind of how we got involved with the whole webinar in the presentation. But so I did make a presentation on the 31st at the webinar, and I kind of had a shameless slide in my presentation. We happened to be having a webinar that Thursday, I think the webinar was on a Tuesday, but that Thursday we were having a live webinar with our CEO, Dan Adams, that was explaining our new technology. And I had an open invitation there to anybody that was online to come and, visit or to shoot me an email, and I'd get them an invitation. So finished the presentation. I think it was that afternoon I received an email from a gentleman at Crane that was interested in attending the webinar. So fired that over, got him invited. And he did attend the webinar. Didn't hear anything back from him specifically, but I think it was Thursday morning before the webinar even started. I received an email from an engineer, I won't mention his name, and he had a part print of a potential application to use friction welding, and he wanted to set up a conference with me. So we kind of played telephone tag back and forth, but within the next 2 days, we were able to meet and discuss it. And he was very knowledgeable. I was actually surprised at how knowledgeable he was and was in asking the right questions.
Tell me what it's about.
So yeah, so and we went back and forth, and he said in his original email that, hey, this isn't a formal request for a quotation. I want to learn about the technology more. We think we might have some potential applications down the road. And the part print that he showed me was a potential application, but it was for possibly a new design or the next generation. And so that's kind of how it went. I was honestly very surprised that we had that response right away, but very impressed by the gentleman that I spoke to.
Thanks, Tom. That's a very happy circumstance. But I've found out through others, after this was over, I got several emails saying, hey, I listened to so-and-so, or I saw someone else was on who was on the tech demo who might not have demonstrated, but they were very interested in connecting with others. So we're building a network, I think, with Impact, which you did such a terrific job of talking about the impact it's had on you thus far. So Bradford, might you relay some of your experiences?
Definitely. So we have a slightly different experience in that it was relatively unrelated to what our typical day job is. So we took a little bit of a break at, I guess, what was it, March, end of February, March time to, we put our battery development efforts on pause to develop a ventilator in coordination with and support of the IU Health Network to support the COVID-19 surge. And in response to the presentation we made, we had some fantastic feedback and connections made through several different groups within Crane, and then several other manufacturing bodies, as well as or in groups, as well as other people just interested in supporting us. And so we had some fantastic people reach out, support us in several different ways. And so it was wonderful to see that support on all ends.
Great, thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, we had some great connections with some of the folks at Navy Rapid Innovation, so that was much appreciated from our last engagement with at the last event in March. That led to a couple other introductions and connections, and some requests on what we've been doing as well from a COVID-19 response, which is since our company has a future integration technology, we work with a bunch of different parties and have actually been doing a bit of cat herding to help bring some parties together that can help bring drones to the fight against COVID. So that process has matured significantly since March. We've got some the right types of players together now, so that we can actually engage to help bring this forward into an actual type of operational environment, and pass that along over into the Navy side as well, through some of those connections that were made. Also at a couple other different introductions for future potential contracting opportunities, and would certainly love to explore those are more on some of the East Coast Navy side, but would certainly love to continue engaging, especially here at home, with some of the Crane folks in regards to how our technology can interplay with counter UAS, which that became very relevant on last Friday when the Blue Angels had a near miss with a unmanned aircraft over Detroit, if anyone saw that.
I did not see that, nor did I hear about it. I wonder why that is, but yikes. Luckily, it was a miss and not a hit. But at any rate, thanks, Aaron. You guys have all had various levels of working with Crane or other, perhaps, warfare centers. If you were to lend any advice to those who are with us this afternoon, what might that advice be? Brad, do you want to go first?
Sure. We are a fairly new company, and so our interactions have all been fairly recent. And fundamentally, I think one of the most useful things for us was understanding what capabilities Crane specifically could support, but also was looking for, and how we could tune our technology and fit into roles that we didn't know otherwise existed within either support systems or more at the tip of the spear. And so a lot of the conversations that we've been able to have through these presentations and through some of the other networking events has been fantastic for us to understand the key needs of these environments and be able to tune and provide solutions for that. And so on an engineering level and understanding those needs that are often very foreign to us has been indispensable. So really just being able to get contact with the people there, understand what they're looking for, and be able to provide solutions is our takeaway so far. And we look forward to continue interacting with NSWC Crane and the Battery Intervention Center there.
Terrific, thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I think we're relatively new to the SBIR process. We have worked with AFRL in the past, and I think it was Chris that mentioned it. The best thing you can do is network and attend things like these. One of my big lessons learned, I think, is just not asking for more help. We've been around for 92 years, and this year was the first, or actually in 2019 was the first year that we ever really applied for a SBIR as the prime. We'd been involved in a number of different programs as a subcontractor through other companies that were the prime on it. And then once we did the work, and it was a lot of work starting out under the old BAA program. But once we were awarded it and we had our first meeting with the stakeholders at AFRL, one of the first things he said to me, he said, "Man, you guys have been doing this for so long. It's about time that you finally applied to be the prime. Now we can really take this where it really needs to go." And so just that alone was a great shot in the arm. But yeah, there's like your company, IN3 and PTAC, there's so many resources out there. Just take advantage of them and contact those people, and they can really help take a lot of the sting out of and the time actually of applying and learning the process. There is quite a bit to learn. Great,
thank you, Tom. Aaron, I know you've got a decided view on this, so let us hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the startup perspective, I couldn't agree more that the networking piece is very vital to this. We're the only bootstrap startup that I've seen that's shown up at some of the U.S. Army experiments that we've been at, and the reason why we were able to get there was because we made an effort to make sure that we were networking and being at the right places to meet the right types of people. And that resulted in, invitations to submit RFIs, and then, on the merits of what we were submitting and our work on remote ID and IFF technologies, got invitations to go out to these types of events. The most prominent one being last November, where we were out with U.S. Army Futures Command in Fort Sill, and actually then got an opportunity to integrate our prototype with a Northrop Grumman system and provide them an IFF capability for that experiment. So, those are types of game changers that all occurred through networking, through events like this. Traditionally, it's a little more face-to-face, which makes it easier. But definitely don't be shy to reach out to people. That's the difference maker between getting to build that relationship or not. So, I definitely get out there, and face to face is a little hard right now, but events like this, if you see any of the presenters that were presenting something, definitely reach out if you think that there's a topic there to engage on, or even any of the participants. I don't know if there's a list of who's in here, but from the last event the last virtual event that we were at, we started emailing some of the other participants as well to reach out, because we saw potential collaborative efforts there. And those are the types of things that I think, especially from a small business perspective, when teaming with larger businesses, are the things that will really help get to that next major milestone.
Thanks, Aaron. And that's something we miss, is being face to face. I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to do that in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, as you said, the connections that have been made virtually are still pretty darn valuable. And so far, I think the experience of everybody, despite some of the complexities, has been valuable. So thanks for your perspective. For those of you who know me, I hate to give over the microphone, but Matt Burkett has a couple of questions. If all of you recall, Matt is the Deputy for Small Business for Crane, and he had a couple of questions he wanted to ask the panel. So Matt, if you are still on, please ask away.
Yeah, no, Julie, thank you. And again, thanks to the panel members. So, heard some of the successes that you guys have had, and being able to connect with the government, after the tech demo and various events like that. Are there, I'm really looking for what are the best ways to engage you? Because typically the government, in the world that I live in, and these FAR-based contracts, and you've seen all the websites where we post, we post our information and we hope you come and find it. But what are, maybe do you guys have some ideas of some good ways to engage you, where the government can engage you, where the government can engage startup business, and maybe where we can be a little more proactive and a little less reactive as far as that engagement goes?
So I don't know. So Aaron, do you want to go first? How about Matt, you ask the question, and I'll just try to kind of guide who's speaking, just so that we won't be talking over each other.
Yeah, that works. So I don't know if this is the best answer, but from what we have found in some of our customer discovery and some of our actual interviewing of warfighters, from our small business perspective, especially because we're working on some things that are more kind of leading edge of the next generation of technologies that are coming out, we find that the actual boots on the ground are requesting our type of technology, saying this would have been a game changer for them, and in a certain combat environment. And those are the things that we hear from that person who ultimately doesn't have an authority to engage with a small business from a procurement perspective. So I don't know if there's a good forum to kind of meet in between with all the different stakeholders that are needed there, but we will oftentimes not hear about we know that there's a need, and we're developing towards that need, but the navigation in between meeting the government and meeting the right stakeholder in the government to get that need out to that soldier, sailor, airmen, marine, you know, those are a little bit just disjointed. So those are things that I don't know the right answer for it, but would definitely love to see if there's a way where, you know, when you're mentioning meet us, if there's a way to bring all of those things together.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Bradford.
Definitely. So I think my response is probably largely a mirror of what Aaron said. From a contracting and understanding perspective, having a open dialogue where we can understand, where we can support and kind of expand more non-traditional areas would be incredibly valuable, especially when developing new contracting possibilities for areas that the people writing those may not know exist yet. And so being able to develop those together and having those conversations is incredibly valuable for us. And so I think more or less what Aaron said is kind of one of those areas where we can have those continued conversations.
Great, thank you. Tom, your perspective.
Yeah, I ditto what both gentlemen have said. I think we had a little bit of this conversation up in South Bend at the meeting, and what you almost need is like a Google for the military or the DoD. But we fully get it that you know, they don't want to be inundated with a bunch of companies trying to pitch their newest things, but maybe some type of anonymous, like, okay, show me all the engineers, or show me how many engineers that are interested in joining alloys of some type, or that are doing additive manufacturing of specific alloys or components or something, so that there was at least maybe some type of framework where there was a reference, and then you could maybe, you know, contact engineer 33 or shoot engineer 33 an email, or have a direct conversation with them. And I think that's critical for both people. I know on some of the programs that we've been involved with, when the person that's taking on the project from the manufacturer side that's doing the development, they get involved, and it's like, wow, if we would have known up front, we could have helped you write the spec a little bit better to accomplish a certain section of the project. Yeah, so I think, yeah, maybe if there was a way to connect more directly with the people that are actually doing the work, and it's one of the challenges that I've had, and I learned actually at another panel. There's, across all the different the DoD websites, and there's AFWorks, there's NavalX, there's so many different websites. Well, Federal Navigator at least gives you the opportunity to set up a search engine, so you can select all of your feeds and at least find out who's requesting information through a BAA. I don't know how it's done currently at Crane. Like, if a engineer has a problem they're trying to solve, do they reference a database, or how does that process work? How do they go out? Do you know, Matt?
It depends. I mean, it could be a problem statement through Beta SAM. We could just do, you know, there's been a few times where we've issued problem statements on Beta SAM. We use that just because we assume it's probably the most active website as far as what businesses are looking at, and issued problem statements and requested sort of unsolicited proposals or white papers back in response. Some of those go places, some of them, some of them don't, but that's typically how we would do that. I mean, you could handle some of that stuff via an SBIR. You could go that route as well. So those are a couple, those are a couple of avenues, or a couple of ways that we're, trying to get some problem statements out. And that's one area for me, as far as the unsolicited proposals and the white papers go. That's one thing with me. trying to work with our chief strategist of saying, okay, so what areas would you be interested? Because I get a lot of, you meet with a lot of innovative small businesses, and they just want to, they want to know, you guys aren't necessarily buying this on a day-to-day basis utilizing Beta SAM, but I hear you have a constant need for it. Folks from Crane have reached out, what is the best way for me to provide a solution to them, or at least start some dialogue? And it's really trying to look for those areas with our chief strategists and those technical, in our technical community, to figure out what they want to see and what types of businesses, because as a, again, one of my jobs is to continue to grow the small business base. So I want to continue to try to bring the right kinds of small businesses to our engineers at Crane to hopefully allow small businesses to help provide those solutions for us. So maybe that's another route that we can start to push or look deeper into.
Thanks, Matt. We've got a few minutes left. Do you have any other questions, Matt, of our panel?
No. Just say thank you guys for attending, and the knowledge that you've been able to share. I'm sure what you've shared has helped a lot of the other folks on the call. So thank you for that.
So Matt, I'm already thinking about our next small business event. I have a couple of ideas, so be ready.
Always ready.
I know you are. Thank you for your participation, and thank you, Tom, Aaron, and Bradford. You guys have just been warriors with us, and we're so delighted you're such great partners. So thanks so much, and thanks all of you for being with us for almost 2 hours. I hope you found the information to be helpful and certainly worthy of your time. As I've mentioned, we're going to host a number of other events throughout the year. Hopefully we'll be in a town near you, but if we're not, we're going to continue to have a virtual element to these, and we'll look forward to your participation going forward. So again, many thanks for joining us. Thanks to everybody who were presenters today, and again, we'll look forward to seeing you at an upcoming event, and watch too for an invitation to the Innovation Challenge, which will be out either today or tomorrow. Again, thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.